Welcome to Counselor, Beyond Conventional Defense.
Hello and welcome to Counselor, Beyond Conventional Defense, the podcast that challenges the traditional approach to criminal defense and takes a deeper look at how the justice system can evolve, with attorney William Pernik, a trailblazer in criminal defense whose approach is anything but conventional. I am your host, Kevin Rosenquist, and today's episode is When Mental Health Meets the Law, Defending Clients with Empathy. William, it's so good to have you here. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Kevin.
So you have a unique perspective from other attorneys on how you handle and interact with people charged with criminal offenses. What inspired you to approach criminal defendants and their cases in the way that you do?
You know, Kevin, if I'm honest with our audience, I would have to say that this approach was probably born out of frustration. I think it was born out of frustration and desire to obtain better legal outcomes for people whose fates are entrusted to me. I saw that our system, in the way that it is currently set up, is very ill-equipped to handle the complex needs of many of our clients who, as you know, in very large percentages as a demographic, require comprehensive mental health, substance abuse, and other ancillary and related services. 50 to 75% of all clients that we have as criminal defense lawyers will have significant needs in the field of mental health, substance abuse treatment, and potentially other needs such as impulse control of their behavior, domestic violence counseling, and things of that nature, couples counseling. And so I saw that the way we handle cases conventionally in our criminal justice system just did not give us all of the tools we needed. And so I tried to get creative on a case by case, on an ad hoc basis, until one day I realized that we can create a comprehensive system and methodology for handling cases that come to us and use the opportunity that we have while we are in our clients' lives, while they're working with us, to help them change their lives for the better. And I had a dream of doing things differently. And one day I sat down at wee hours of the morning and I wrote it down. And that's how the system and the Pernik Law Method was born.
Wow, that's cool. What was the first time like when you just first decided to take this more compassionate approach to handling a case, specifically maybe a drug charge case?
You know, I don't think compassion was ever a problem. I grew up in a family of public school teachers in a third world country. My house, the house I grew up in, was constantly filled with people who my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather were tutoring, often for free. We constantly had people coming to the house, thanking my grandparents, thanking my parents for the things they've done to help them. So I think from the very beginning, from early on in life, I learned, thanks to the adults in my life, that there was a right way to interact with human beings, which is to understand them and to help them, regardless of who they are or where they come from. So compassion, empathy, those things were never a problem. The problem is that when you go to law school, you get indoctrinated in these doctrines, some more complex than others. And then when you begin your job as a young lawyer in a public defender's office, in the district attorney's office, most likely for most lawyers who practice criminal law, that's your career path when you start out, you don't really have much time because things are moving very fast, or much space or safe space to experiment, to be yourself, and to really apply your vision. Instead, what you're doing is you're processing people through the gates of the criminal justice system, and you're just moving very, very large volumes of cases, which translate to human beings. And that's just not the right way to go about it. And so, I had a degree in psychology. When I started college, I initially thought I wanted to be a psychologist. I thought I wanted to go to graduate school. I always wanted to understand who people are, why they think, and why they act the way that they do. And so I think that really helped me, because this interest that I've had, almost innate interest in helping people, and understanding why people do what they do so I can help them not do that again. I think ultimately, once I had the time to catch my breath, to shake off all the things that law school and on-the-job training filled my head with, and reconnect with who I really am inside as a human being, reach inside my soul, inside my heart, and um, and figure out what's the right thing to do here when we have an opportunity working with hundreds of people every single year, or thousands if you're a public defender. And that's when I realized that I have the privilege to be me, the freedom to be me, to create something and to practice something consistent with how I believe. And at least for me, that really didn't happen until almost 10 years ago when I entered private practice, because at that point, I was no longer accountable to anyone other than my conscience, my clients, God, and the free market, which happened to be a really good judge of talent and effort, and recognized compassion and empathy do have a place, and helping people get better and fixing people is actually the right thing. So that's how it happened for me. So I don't remember there being one specific case that made me realize, oh my God, I've been doing it wrong all along. I think over the years, like many people, I grew exhausted and frustrated with the constantly revolving gates of our justice system. And I saw that the same people I helped yesterday are coming back today, and are coming back, or most likely will come back tomorrow. And then 10 years later, I'm doing the same thing with their kids. I started reflecting on personal experiences. I started reflecting on experiences that my friends have, people I've gotten to know over the years as I got older have. And I realized we got to do something different. We got to do I reflected on it, and I realized we got to do something different, because if we don't change how we operate, we will be doing this forever, the same exact way, and it will never get better.
You've mentioned before that understanding the why is important behind a charge or a drug charge, whatever, that's really crucial. Can you explain how you go about uncovering the underlying factors that lead someone to go down this path?
I think that this process begins with building a positive attorney-client relationship. You have to have a relationship that's built on trust, built on confidence. You have to be you, and you have to be genuine, and clients have to feel safe to share honestly with you what happened to them. If people are not giving you all of the information that you require, it may lead you to incomplete solutions, or it might take you in the wrong direction when you analyze a case. So I think step one is always to build a relationship with the client, and to have a really good conversation or series of conversations with your client. Step two, I don't think as lawyers we should be deaf or blind to the suffering of people who need our help. We can use the time that we spend with them while we represent them, while we provide this essential critical service, to also see the difficulties that they're going through. In a conventional approach, oftentimes lawyers don't want to know why you had the drugs. We don't want to know why you are selling drugs to support yourself. We kind of assume that all of these things happen. Sometimes we have flawed assumptions, but really we're looking at any and all legal reasons to challenge pieces of evidence, a way to obtain new facts, a way to undermine the facts that the government has, or a way to interpret the facts that the government has differently. So we focus on the factual issues and we focus on the legal issues. And what we don't look at is the reason why we have a person who acts the way they act, and the reason why we have the facts that we have. And so what I do is I review the entire situation that my client presents with. I go in depth into the different relationships that my client has with other parties involved in the case. I collect extensive background information. I trust my instinct, and I trust that my genuine feeling and my genuine desire to help a person will allow them to open up to me. I always tell them, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. And that usually gets people to open up to me quite a bit. And so I gather all of the information, and then I make a judgment call. I assess the situation, and I discuss it with my client. And oftentimes people know the problems that they're dealing with. They've just never had the opportunity to address them. Oftentimes we got people who are just caught up in this rat race that they're in, They know that they're struggling. They know they're suffering, but they're so busy taking care of everybody else, dealing with their job, dealing with the family, perhaps using drugs to cope with the stress so they don't have to think about some of the problems that they have. And they never actually take the time to stop, to think,
Mhm.
to evaluate, and to see, why am I here? And so I provide that as part of my service. This is where I act not only as an attorney, but also as a counselor at law. And this is where I have the discussion. Okay, I know that you were found in possession of 1.5 ounces of methamphetamine. I know that you have been in prior run-ins with the law. Let's talk about how you got here. What is it that led you to this? And when you ask the question why, what's shocking is that you never really know what the answer will be. And sometimes the answers will truly floor you. Sometimes you're going to hear stories of such extreme trauma, abuse, things that happen to human beings that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And that's when you really begin to appreciate the correctness of this approach. And when you learn more about your client, when you learn more about what happened to them, then you can help them better. You can achieve far better legal outcomes. You can qualify your client for so many different alternatives that we have now in California that are treatment based, and best practices that we have that are available to so many people if only you ask the right questions, if only you try to understand them. And the best part about doing that is that by doing so, you can not only fix the current legal problem that they're in, but hopefully enable them to get on a better path so that they don't get in trouble again in the same way, so they can learn and they can spread that knowledge to others and fix the problems they have in their lives, in their family lives, with their children, with their parents, with their spouses, become better members of society, complete, healed, restored human beings.
So it sounds like mental health is a pretty big part of what your approach is getting to the root of the root of the problem and addressing the mental health issues that have led them to where they get to.
I don't think mental health is a big part of what my approach is. I am just recognizing things as they are. And the
Okay.
reality is that you have 3/4 of population in our criminal courthouses who already struggle with mental health issues. And maybe only 5% to 8% of these people actually get treatment services. So what I am doing is I'm identifying correctly the population of clients that I'm working with. And people who are not doing what I'm doing are applying one set of tools to a population that requires another. Instead of addressing, for example, the mental health problem, we're addressing the legal problem. But the legal problem is a symptom of a much larger condition. It's not going to be for 100% of people, which is why we have both conventional and beyond conventional approaches at my practice. But it's going to play such a huge role for 3/4 of this population, and perhaps even more if you're really good, if you're really proactive, if you can spot these issues well, if you educate yourself so that you can pick up on signs of somebody going through a substance abuse disorder, somebody going through a mood disorder, somebody going through um, symptoms of a some kind of psychotic disorder. You pick up when you talk to people when somebody has these ideas that to you clearly appear to be delusions. Okay, you know that this person is not rationally thinking. You listen to how they talk. Their speech can hold clues to potential mental health conditions that they have. You can spot people who are withdrawing from drugs or are high as they're sitting in your office. Okay, so if I'm talking to a person who got in trouble, got arrested, went to jail, spent the last of their grandma's money to bail out, and they're still high while they're talking to a lawyer in their office, Houston, we got a problem.
Yeah.
This is a person who's not coping with life challenges appropriately. So I'm going to steer him or her in the right direction.
Well, that makes sense.
And that's what I'm trying to do. So mental health treatment plays a critical need in cases where there are underlying mental health issues. Many of them also have co-occurring substance abuse issues and require treatment for not only an ongoing mental health condition, ongoing drug addiction or alcohol addiction, potentially treatment also needs to be trauma informed based on what happened to them when they were much younger. And we saw that in a previous episode with our guest Adina.
Yeah, that was a fascinating story. I was actually gonna ask if you wanted to talk about a particular case where this compassionate approach made a significant difference in the outcome for your client. Would you like to talk about that one, as in case anyone missed that other episode, or would you have another one that you would like to mention?
I think Adina is a really great example
Yeah,
of how
I
you
agree.
can approach a case where you're dealing with somebody who is charged with a felony for possession of some contraband, for possession of some drugs, and immediately from meeting the person, from learning their history, from learning that they have suffered unimaginable amount of trauma in their life, from realizing that this is an individual who's been in and out of the system, in and out of rehabs, you immediately pick up that, okay, we got a problem here. We probably have a problem that's much more complex than it has ever been diagnosed before, because we know that it hasn't worked yet. So we need to do something very differently. And so with Adina, on the surface level, we knew that we had a young woman with a history of trauma who was diagnosed as being severely addicted to drugs, in particular fentanyl. We knew that she went to extreme lengths to acquire fentanyl, that she overdosed multiple times, and that at any one point, if things went wrong and she was on her own, she could kill herself by overdosing on drugs, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially fentanyl.
So especially fentanyl,
Yeah.
especially when a person is in and out of jail, because when you listen to how Adina describes it, when a person has been incarcerated, especially for a period of time, their tolerance for opioids actually goes down. So when an addict leaves the jail, their brain tells them, I gotta get high, I gotta get high, I gotta get high. But their body cannot process the same amounts anymore because it's now healed a little bit. And so their tolerance has been reduced. So it's super dangerous for a person. They can overdose, and especially when they can't control the purity of the drug, the concentration of active ingredients, things of that nature. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now we have this individual like Adina who has been in and out of jail, in and out of rehabs, obviously has a raging drug problem. The drug problem is what the parents tell me as a lawyer in her case and countless other cases, um, and yet it didn't work. So that leads me as a professional to ask a question: why didn't it work? Did it not work because treatment wasn't provided in the past? Not really. Treatment was provided on many prior occasions. Did it not work because a client wasn't motivated to do the treatment? There is a little bit of that. She did leave rehabs multiple times, but she also went into them multiple times. And when I talked to her, she was motivated. She just had no faith that it would work. So as you assess these things, and one after another, you rule out certain things, just like a doctor, when they're doing a differential diagnosis, would rule out certain conditions based on certain symptoms or test results. I rule out these various problems, and I realize, okay, clearly we have a drug problem with this young woman, but for some reason, just pursuing drug treatment doesn't work. We must have something else that's interfering with the effectiveness of that treatment, other than just my client not wanting to do it, because she wanted to do it. She just didn't
Right.
believe she could. And so that's when we got the idea. And I made a mistake in the beginning of this case. The very first thing that we've done is we got her out of custody and we stuck her in a drug rehab. And of course, she left right away and disappeared. And we feared that she would be dead. I lost, a lot of sleep, and I worried a lot. And I talked to her parents a lot. And I felt a lot of personal responsibility and guilt, frankly,
Yeah.
because I convinced the judge to get my drug addicted client out of jail. She's now on the street instead of a rehab where she was supposed to be. And if she overdoses and dies, it's hard not to blame yourself when you played some role. I understand I'm not the one who supplied the drug. I'm not the one who ingested the drug. There's obviously this barrier where people make their own decision. But you can appreciate how, as a professional, I could have played a role in a chain of events that led to someone's death. And that happened to me. And
Yeah.
that's a very heavy feeling to have at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So we put her in the rehab. Rehab didn't work. When she got back and we reevaluated why it didn't work, we knew we had to go deeper. And that particular program she went into was supposed to have a psych component to it. So there was supposed to be a mental health treatment. She left the program so quickly, they never got to that. So then we started working with a forensic expert. I had an unbelievably good doctor who is an expert in clinical psychology, who I trust to meet with my clients and do these comprehensive mental health evaluations. So when the doctor met with her, I was shocked reading the report when I read all of the facts about her background, all of the trauma that the doctor was able to unearth. Because if me, as a lawyer who works with mentally ill people or drug addicted people, if I'm able to obtain some of this information, a really good psychologist can unearth even more. And so when I read everything that I've read, it was apparent to me that something was missing. And what was missing is trauma informed treatment, addressing underlying abuse that this amazing young woman has gone through, unfairly, brutally abused, that never got reported, treatment that never happened for that. And so that's where we understood we needed to do things differently. So we got her working with a trauma counselor while she was in the jail. We started interviewing programs. This young lady's mom and I were on the phone. We were brainstorming strategies. We were talking about what programs would work best. I was trying to use the things that I know. Mom was trying to research things on her own, and multiple programs were interviewed. We learned from the past mistakes. We knew that we didn't want to just release her out on bail. We now needed to arrange for somebody from the program to go and pick her up outside of the jail. Me and a young associate at my firm, younger associate at my firm, Alana, were at the jail at 6 in the morning. We had this lady who was supposed to pick up Adina and take her to a program, meeting us at the jail. We're there, rubbing our eyes 2.5 hours before our court functioning time, just to make sure Adina doesn't disappear, so we can catch her outside of the door by the Sally port and make sure that the chain of custody for our wonderful client does not get interrupted by a crazy decision to flee. And we were on the phone making sure she got to her destination, and we were following up and doing things like that. And so we learned that this young woman will not be successful by addressing just the drugs. We need to address the reasons why she started doing drugs. And we did that. It was a long road, but it was remarkably successful. I keep in touch with her. Her father just called me. Today is a Tuesday. Her dad called me on Sunday to tell me how well his daughter is doing. I feel like we were able to really change the course of someone's life and hopefully do a course correction. And she's an amazing human being, and I wish her nothing but the best. I really hope that she is able to change other people's lives in a positive way. So, and you couldn't do that with just a conventional approach, because conventionally, you look at a person who police found in a hotel room, high on drugs, with drugs in her possession, with illegal contraband near her. In this case, it was some computer equipment from her boyfriend that was used to, key people's personal information and create false credit cards and things like that. She was dating some guy who was, also using drugs, who was apparently a smart, tech type individual before his addiction took him down. And so this is what he was doing. He had a girlfriend in the room who was using, these cards and numbers that he obtained to order food for herself while getting high. And then cops show up, they find all the stuff in her possession. So what do you do as a conventional approach? Well, you look to see if the police officers had a legal reason to enter the room. If they did have a legal reason, move on to the next step. If they didn't, you file a motion to try and exclude evidence that was found inside the room. If police are here lawfully, then you are out of luck. There's not a whole lot you can do about the evidence. Then you look at your client's statement. Did they read your client her rights? Did they follow the right procedure, or were your client's rights violated? If your client's rights were violated, maybe you can exclude your client's confession. But if they were not, you're stuck with it. You got to figure out something else. And then factually, drugs were found. She's the only one in the room. Elements of the crime are met. So how much mileage can you get out of a conventional approach? Is there any way you can get this case dismissed if you either use the law or the facts of this case? You can't. But understanding why she did what she did, taking the time to process it and to develop a good solution for the underlying problems, that convinced the court to give her a chance, when we fully presented her story correctly and completely, to give her a chance in a program, to give her several other chances, even when she didn't do well at various stages of the program, with explanation for why it didn't work and how we're going to do things differently. And at the end of the day, we have a functioning, amazing, incredible, beautiful human being who is now a licensed professional, whose life is now different, who's now back in her family's life.
Yeah.
Somebody's daughter was gone for years, wandered off into the darkness, into this abyss of drug and untreated trauma, and now she's back. The light of their life has been returned, and you can't get to that conventionally, which is why time and time again I rely on this different way of handling people's cases by going beyond the conventional defense. And she is one of many, many examples where it worked and worked really well and will continue to work as long as lawyers know what they're doing, having frank discussions with their clients, using the right tools, and are not afraid to go against the current and to advocate for something not that law school filled their heads with, but what their heart is telling them, what their conscience is telling them is the right thing to do. And that's what being and going beyond conventional defense is all about for me.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to go out and listen to that other episode with Adina. It's a really fascinating story, a really inspiring story as well. And I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to Counselor Beyond Conventional Defense with attorney William Pernik. To connect with William and his team, head to perniklaw.com and please like and subscribe to our channel. William, so good to have you here. Thanks so much for the discussion.
It's really a pleasure, Kevin. Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing our dialogue.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.